The man woke up on the beach and noticed something strange. There was a hole in his hand. It looked like a bullet wound, but oddly enough, it didn't hurt at all. Even when sunlight shone through, he felt nothing. Panicked, he had no idea something even stranger was about to happen. When he got home and looked in the mirror, he noticed another hole in his shirt. Tearing it open, he saw a bullet hole in his chest, just like the one on his hand. Raphael was stunned, staring at his pale reflection. Was he alive or dead? Terrified, he rushed to the hospital in search of a doctor. By procedure, he needed a registration number, but in his panic, Raphael had brought no papers. As he argued with the staff, a doctor called his name. It was Stain, who had once treated Raphael's father. Seeing Raphael on the verge of death, Stain quickly told the nurse he'd take over. In a private room, Raphael showed him the wounds on his chest and hand. Stain was baffled. No one could survive injuries like that. Then came the most terrifying sight. The heart monitor showed a flat line. Raphael had no heartbeat. Raphael nearly lost his mind. Clearly, he was still alive. He suspected the machine was broken. "I'm sitting right here and talking to you." But Stain admitted he couldn't explain it. He took a blood sample from the wound, saying that whether Raphael was alive or dead, this needed to be studied. This only enraged Raphael. He cursed and stormed out of the hospital. When he returned home, his dog barked wildly as if he were a stranger. In that instant, Raphael felt something squirming inside him, but the sensation quickly vanished. Looking at himself in the mirror, Raphael grabbed tweezers and dug into the wound, pulling out a bullet. He bandaged himself and remembered the night before. Raphael was a cop. That night, he met a criminal by the river. The man offered him a bribe and asked if there would be any surprise inspections. Raphael took the money and reassured him. "Tell your boss there won't be any surprise inspections this week." "That's good to hear." After the man left, Raphael saw a figure strangling someone nearby. He shouted, and the attacker fled. When Raphael reached the spot, the victim was already dead. He chased the killer to the end of a bridge, where the man hid behind a pillar. Raphael closed in, but suddenly, the next thing he knew, Raphael was thrown into the sea. The ringing of his phone woke him up. It was Dr. Stain, urgently asking Raphael to cooperate in research and promising to keep everything secret. Raphael hung up. He then called his colleagues to report the crime. But when they arrived at the scene, there was no body, no evidence of anything. His coworkers began doubting his story. If he truly saw a victim and a masked killer, why hadn't he called for backup? Raphael insisted he had seen it with his own eyes. Suddenly, rage overtook him. His face twisted with a feral look, as if he were losing control. Thankfully, it passed quickly. Regaining his composure, he walked alone to the other end of the bridge. While no one was looking, he stuffed the bullet into a gap in the railing, then called others over, claiming to have found evidence. If no one would believe him, he'd have to fake proof. Exhausted, Raphael returned home. Strange things kept happening. His stomach growled with hunger. Sitting at the dinner table, he devoured food like a man starved for years. He even grabbed the whole pot. But after gulping down the last drink of water, he vomited everything back up. His daughter scolded him, snapping him out of his frenzy. A moment ago, he had completely lost control, terrifying his wife and child. Realizing something was terribly wrong, Raphael decided to sleep on the couch that night. His little daughter thought he was sick. "Dad, are you okay?" But when Raphael hugged her, he suddenly turned violent, holding her tighter and tighter. Luckily, he snapped back to his senses, told her not to tell her mother, and urged her to go to bed. Raphael went to see Stain, telling him that when he hugged his daughter, he felt something inside his body controlling him. He wanted to know what was happening to him, but to his surprise, Stain didn't look shocked at all. After a pause, he explained that Raphael could never go to a hospital. If anyone found out about this, they'd cut him open for research and he'd become a lab rat. Raphael must not tell anyone. Stain said he had a plan. He led Raphael down to the basement, where there was a lab. He could figure everything out here, but to be safe, he needed to observe Raphael for 24 hours. This would limit Raphael's freedom, but also ensure his safety. Raphael hesitated for a moment, then refused. Being a guinea pig for one man or for a crowd was no different. Stain tried to persuade him, but then Raphael got a call from a woman he knew, begging for help before hanging up. Raphael had no choice but to go. When he entered, he found her collapsed on the floor. She had overdosed. As he poured her water, a man appeared behind him, the same criminal he'd met the night before. It turned out the police had conducted a surprise raid on the refugees they'd just brought in. The criminal had almost been caught, but because Raphael had said there'd be no inspections, they chose to act tonight. Now furious, the man knew his boss wouldn't spare him. He stabbed Raphael in the side. At that moment, the smell of blood filled the air. The beast inside Raphael awoke completely. Raphael transformed. He lunged at the criminal, bit off a chunk of flesh, and retreated to a corner to devour it. He was no longer human. The terrified criminal fled. Minutes later, Raphael returned to normal. He staggered out, unable to stay there any longer. The next morning, he returned to the beach where he had woken up, hoping to find clues. His hand itched intensely. Removing the bandage, he saw the hole had healed, leaving only a scar. He laughed out loud, thinking maybe the nightmare was over. One night, the masked man appeared again, planting a surveillance device on a ceiling lamp before heading back to his car. But when he removed the mask, I couldn't believe my eyes. It was Stain. What on earth was he doing? While showering, Raphael noticed something horrifying, a bug inside the wound on his chest, a sign that his body was starting to rot. Stunned, he went to Stain for an examination. The wound had clearly healed the night before. What was happening now? As Stain drew blood from the wound, Raphael's stomach growled. In his hunger, he bared his teeth. Luckily, the moment passed quickly and he returned to normal. Stain hadn't realized how close he'd come to becoming food. He simply said Raphael needed to be observed in a controlled environment. Then he handed Raphael a scented spray. His body was beginning to rot, emitting a foul stench. Raphael suddenly remembered his wife's disgusted face. "Go take a shower, you stink." He now realized he had lost his sense of smell. Stain advised him to stay in a cool environment to slow the decay. The results showed that while Raphael's brain was still active, something was draining energy from his cells. Once the cells died off, the brain would discard them, along with his motor functions and senses. When your energy runs out, your consciousness will disappear. But Raphael didn't grasp the importance of consciousness, he only worried about dying. "How much time do I have left?" "Sorry, I don't know. I've never seen anything like this." Stain suggested Raphael stay for further research, for science and for humanity's future. It would be groundbreaking, but Raphael didn't want to carry such a burden. His only hope was to return to normal. For now, the only person who might have answers was the masked man who had shot him. He had no idea that man was Stain. What if he doesn't have the answer either? After saying goodbye, Raphael hurried off. As soon as he left, Stain took frozen cells for analysis and returned to his notes. "Raphael thinks my bullet made him this way, but that's not true. That bullet definitely killed him. But what on earth brought him back to life? I hope these cells will give me the answer." It turned out Stain didn't know the whole truth either. He pulled back a curtain to reveal a large water tank. This will be a masterpiece. Floating inside was the body of the man Raphael had seen murdered that night. Stain began experimenting and discovered a virus in Raphael's blood. Raphael returned to the police station, hoping his colleagues would investigate the masked killer and track down whoever had shot him, but they insisted the case didn't exist. They had found no evidence, and some even suspected it was all in Raphael's head, that he had shot his own hand. The bullet he had secretly placed in the bridge railing proved nothing. Furious, Raphael realized that in their eyes, he was just a useless screw-up. He demanded to know why they had conducted a surprise raid at the docks that night without his knowledge. His superior stood up angrily. "Prove your worth to us." They handed him a file on smugglers. They had arrested several people but couldn't get answers. Since Raphael knew some of these criminals, he pointed to the key player. "You should start by investigating this one." On his way home, Raphael saw something heartbreaking, his wife walking with another man. Because of his years of drinking, she had already filed for divorce. She had only stayed out of duty, caring for Raphael's sick father. Back home, Raphael snooped through her phone and confirmed she had been in frequent contact with the man. Just then, his daughter walked in, and he quickly shoved the phone into his pocket. That night, dinner was painfully awkward. Raphael didn't say a word and didn't touch his food. Even though he was starving, the bland dishes on the table no longer tempted him. He didn't realize ordinary food could no longer satisfy his hunger. Late at night, Raphael stood by his wife's bed, stomach growling. Thankfully, he managed to restrain himself, but then his palm began to itch. Removing the bandage, he saw the wound, once healed, was now rotting. He went down to the garage to sleep and spotted the freezer. Remembering Stain's words, that cold temperatures could slow the decay, he climbed inside. The next morning, once his family had left, he crawled out, still starving. Since biting that criminal, he hadn't eaten a thing. As he turned around, a man suddenly appeared behind him. As his emotions shifted, Raphael's face twisted into a feral expression. He slammed the garage door shut as the beast took control. When he came back to his senses, he found his body covered in blood. The horrifying scene stunned him. He screamed for help, even tried to resuscitate the mangled corpse. Eventually, realizing it was hopeless, he hurried to clean up the blood and cover his tracks. Raphael wrapped the body in plastic and shoved it into his trunk. Just as he was about to leave, his colleague Joachim showed up. Raphael panicked, but Joachim noticed nothing. He was only there to bring Raphael along to investigate the smuggling case. They were tailing the wife of the arrested crime boss, certain she would reach out to her husband's men. Relieved, Raphael went with him. Soon, the target met someone, and Joachim snapped photos as evidence. But then, noises thudded from the trunk. Raphael opened it and was shocked. The man he had killed was alive again, apparently suffering the same condition as him. Without hesitation, Raphael grabbed a fire extinguisher and knocked him out cold. Just as he finished, Joachim returned. Luckily, he didn't notice a thing, but halfway through the drive, more banging echoed. "Did you hear that? Something in the trunk." Raphael scrambled for an excuse, then suddenly slammed on the brakes. "Oh my God. Maybe you should check." Joachim got out, about to open the trunk, but Raphael floored the gas, driving away. He headed for a deserted harbor. Once sure no one was around, he opened the trunk. He asked the man who he was. The man explained he'd been ordered by a masked figure to kidnap Raphael and bring him back. Raphael was stunned. The man he was hunting was also hunting him. Right after that, Stain received a message from the kidnapper saying the job was done and arranging a meeting on the boat. Raphael was waiting there, but Stain had no intention of showing up. He had already planted cameras on the boat and knew exactly what Raphael was planning. Unexpectedly, Raphael discovered the cameras and realized he was under constant surveillance by the masked man, but since he didn't know the masked man was Stain, he made a critical mistake. Raphael brought the kidnapper to Stain's house. "You want a test subject, don't you?" Raphael knew he had died and come back. He was clearly alive, yet he had no heartbeat. To keep his body from rotting, he had been sleeping in a freezer. Ordinary food could no longer satisfy him. Only human flesh could sustain his life. He didn't want to hurt anyone, but he had already killed, unable to control himself when the hunger took over. The next morning, Raphael discovered the wound on his chest had completely healed. He even felt more energized than when he was alive. He rushed to Stain for answers. Stain explained that he had found a rare virus in Raphael's blood, and his mutation might be linked to it. He asked if Raphael had ever been bitten by a bird or animal. Raphael shook his head. Stain immediately grew wary, realizing how dangerous Raphael could be. Just hours earlier, the kidnapper Andre had started showing signs of hunger. Stain had offered him bread, but he vomited it out. When Stain left to change clothes, his daughter snuck into the basement. Andre coaxed her into playing a game, telling her to bring him the keys. Terrified, she obeyed. When she handed over the keys, Andre went berserk and grabbed her hand. Luckily, Stain returned in time. He tested Andre himself and quickly confirmed the truth. Andre craved human flesh. That meant Raphael did too. Stain worried Raphael might attack him next, but instead, Raphael stripped off his shirt, revealing the changes in his body. Stain gave him an answer. Every time Raphael ate human flesh, his wounds healed. The combination of the virus and human flesh made him stronger, sharper, and healthier. It was a shocking medical discovery. Stain eagerly took another blood sample. Meanwhile, Andre, starving and furious, blamed Raphael for his condition. He demanded Raphael find him human meat. "You know what I need, you need it too. I'm starving, get me food." "I can't do that." "Of course not, you're a cop. You could grab some criminals, killers off the street." But Raphael couldn't bring himself to do it. Turning Andre into this had already filled him with guilt. He couldn't harm anyone else. After leaving, Raphael met Joachim. "Oh God. Feeling guilty, are you?" The day before, Raphael had discovered his wife's affair with Joachim. He hadn't confronted him. His drinking had destroyed their marriage, and now he was paying the price. For now, Raphael joined Joachim in investigating the smuggling case. They tailed the crime boss's wife and located a hideout. She seemed to be looking for someone. Soon after, she left, bent down to check something, then walked away. When she was gone, Raphael checked the spot and found bloodstains, though he couldn't make sense of it. That night, the woman went to wash her car but was attacked. Sounds of savage tearing followed. When the car rolled out, no one was inside, just splattered with fresh blood. Police arrived quickly, baffled. This was the second such case. The place where Raphael had spotted blood earlier was the scene of the first. Raphael stared at it all, the sense of familiarity chilling him. Both bodies had been stuffed into crates, mauled with bite marks, and shoved into the crematorium. The culprit was the mysterious man in the hat. Another night passed. The nutrients from human flesh inside Raphael had nearly run out. His body grew weaker, his wounds began to rot. If he didn't eat, he wouldn't survive. Desperate, he pressed ice against his wounds to slow the decay. As the hunger overwhelmed him, he spotted a rat nearby, grabbed it, and devoured it, but moments later, he vomited it all out. This wasn't the food his body needed. Raphael sank into despair. Did he really have to become a cannibal monster just to live? He wasn't alone. Andre was suffering the same hunger. The thought thrilled Stain. "I know what can satisfy you. This is a chance for your cells to multiply." Sometime later, Stain visited an old woman as her private doctor. She let him in without suspicion, only to be knocked unconscious. This was clearly the meal he was preparing for Andre. But before he could do anything, Raphael arrived. He demanded to know what would happen if he refused to eat human flesh. As they were about to continue the conversation, they found Andre on the brink of death. His final wish was to return to his boat, back to the sea. Moments later, he died. Stain seemed disappointed, but Raphael saw through it. "Upset about losing your lab rat." Just then, Raphael received a call from his superior. Joachim was missing. 30 minutes earlier, the detained refugees had escaped. Witnesses had seen them at the docks, trying to flee, but when police arrived, they were all dead. Joachim had vanished after leaving the scene. Raphael knew where he'd gone, the smuggler's hideout. Sure enough, Joachim was there. He kicked down the door and found blood everywhere and a dead criminal. As he bent down to examine the body, a man appeared behind him. Raphael arrived shortly after and found Joachim on the floor. He rushed over, only to see the light switch on. Standing there was Tobias, the criminal Raphael had bitten on the hand. After that night, Tobias had hidden in a bar, only to die in a brawl. But when he came back, he wasn't like Raphael. He had no humanity left. He was stronger, deadlier. The 2 recent murders and the massacre of the refugees were all his doing. At that moment, the corpse on the ground suddenly revived. Tobias fired another shot into its head, finishing it off. He turned to Raphael and said only a headshot could kill an infected mutant. That was why he always wore a steel helmet. Then Tobias got to the point. He wanted Raphael to work with him again. Raphael could be his insider at the police station, and Tobias would reward him. He wasn't the same weakling anymore. The people who once bullied him were now his food. Together, they could control the smuggling business, but Raphael flatly refused. Tobias, we can't keep hurting people. And who's going to stop us? Tobias taunted him further, urging him to eat Joachim since he had stolen Raphael's wife. The hunger inside nearly consumed Raphael. Just as he was about to bite Joachim, he turned and attacked Tobias instead. Regaining control, Raphael fired his gun at Tobias, but the bullets couldn't pierce the steel helmet. Tobias escaped. Shaken back to his senses, Raphael dragged Joachim to the hospital. Fortunately, his life wasn't in danger. When questioned by his superiors, Raphael only described the killer. About 6 feet tall, strong build, and nothing more. The refugees' bodies were sent for autopsy. They all bore bite marks and gunshot wounds to the head. Afraid the truth about the mutants would be exposed, Raphael tried to pass it off as wild dog attacks, but the coroner confirmed the bites were human. You're telling me there's a cannibal on the loose out there? Raphael grew even more anxious. Joachim, too, raised suspicions. If the victims were already dead, why had the killer fired another shot? They were getting closer to the truth. The chief ordered a total news blackout and a full sweep of the docks. Before the lockdown, Raphael honored his promise to Andre. He took his boat out to sea, tied the anchor to Andre's body bag, and cast it into the water. But now he had to face himself. His body was rotting faster, his vision blurring. What came next terrified him even more. The next morning, while speaking with his wife, he suddenly felt a shift inside. Horrified, Raphael realized he was losing control. He hurried to the docks to meet Joachim. At first, Raphael tried to ignore the fact Joachim had slept with his wife, but Joachim's suspicions cut deep. 6 feet tall, strong build. What kind of cop gave such a vague description of a suspect? Joachim accused Raphael of deliberately hiding the truth. That accusation enraged him.
Mevrouw, ben doen was al niet genoeg. Nu moet mijn carrière er ook nog aan.
Die twee hebben niks met elkaar te maken, oké?
Nee.
The argument grew more heated until Joachim shoved Raphael into a corner. At that moment, Raphael's stomach growled violently. Joachim turned and found Raphael crawling on the floor. Raphael. Thankfully, he hadn't seen Raphael lose control earlier. Raphael scrambled to his feet, shaken, unsure how much longer he could hold on. All he could do was hope Stain found a solution soon. Meanwhile, Stain hesitated. His only test subject was dead, but he couldn't waste the old woman. He came up with a new plan. I'll get the virus sample. I'll have a new subject to study. He decided to use the old woman. After recording his notes, he gagged her, but during the extraction, she died. Though disappointed, Stain refused to waste the body. He placed her in a large tank, while the previous corpse had mysteriously disappeared. Days later, still struggling to find a new subject, Stain got an idea during a conversation with his wife. She mentioned a young beggar she had met, a newcomer with no family or friends. Stain told her to invite the young man home under the pretense of helping him. The boy, named Gino, was grateful to the Stain family, but Stain's questions were strange. Do you use drugs? No. Are you healthy? Any heart problems? No. Though uneasy, Gino politely answered. Once Stain confirmed he was perfectly healthy, he poured him a drink. When Gino grew drowsy, Stain told his wife to leave. Sweetheart, put our daughter to bed. I'll take care of our friend here. He then carried Gino into a room. Meanwhile, Raphael faced a different problem. His son had developed a habit of stealing, and Raphael scolded him harshly, but the boy talked back, accusing him of never being a real father. He said he wanted a new stepdad instead. The words enraged Raphael, awakening the beast inside. Elsewhere, a dead man had been propped up at a hotel reception desk. For 5 days, no one noticed until a woman's card stopped working. When she asked the staff, they discovered the horrifying truth. The corpse looked fresh, its face still pink, but it was lifeless. She called the police. Back at the station, everyone was stunned by the human statue, but one officer noticed the victim's bright orange-red sneakers. She recalled Raphael's earlier account. A man about 40, wearing a gray suit, orange-red sneakers. Raphael had said the masked killer shot him through the hand that night. At the time, they dismissed it as drunken nonsense, but now it was clear Raphael had been telling the truth. When they went to Raphael's home, his wife said she hadn't seen him since the night before when he had strangled his son and stormed out. Desperate, Raphael hid in an abandoned boat. Without human flesh, his body was rotting. Soon, footsteps echoed above. Luckily, it was his superior. Raphael quickly shut off the lights, bundled up, and claimed he had the flu to avoid showing his corpse-like face. His superior didn't press further but handed him a video. In the footage, the masked man placed the human statue on a table. Before leaving, he looked straight at the camera, as if daring someone to notice. Finally, Raphael had proof he wasn't lying. His superior assigned him to investigate the case. Stein, reading the news, was thrilled. He rewatched his surveillance footage, confirming the victim was the same corpse he had preserved in formalin. Later, he visited his mother's grave. "The time has come, mother. The world will see my masterpiece." It was clear he had been waiting for this moment. Twisted by childhood trauma, Stein wanted to turn society's forgotten into works of art displayed before the world. Soon, a second human statue was discovered. The old woman Stein had abducted. As a child, Stein and his mother lived on the margins, ignored by everyone. After she died, he clawed his way up to become a respected doctor. He convinced himself he had a mission to save the overlooked, but this delusion had turned him into a ruthless killer, and now another task awaited him. Gino had been lured in by Stein and became the first artificially created mutant subject. Stein injected the virus into him, then waited for results, but it wasn't long before Stein's wife, Anna, noticed something was off. She wondered why Gino had left without a word. Stein lied, saying perhaps he wasn't used to the environment here, but Anna pointed out, "It's just that I saw the two of you go downstairs together." Indeed, she had seen Stein lead Gino to the basement. Still, Stein tried to cover it up. "Don't worry about him anymore. I believe that wherever he is, he'll fulfill what fate has planned." Anna's eyes lingered on him with growing fear. Meanwhile, Raphael called Stein, asking if there was any progress in the research, if there was something to stop him from going insane. He could feel the beast inside devouring his consciousness, but Stein had no answers. At that moment, Raphael noticed a bottle of foundation. Looking at himself in the mirror, he applied it to his face, successfully masking his corpse-like bruises. Soon after, Raphael went to the morgue. "Can I have a moment alone with the body?" As soon as the coroner stepped out, Raphael opened the freezer. It was the only way to keep himself alive without being too cruel, but shortly after he left, the coroner noticed something unusual. Feeling better, Raphael went to see Joachim. He investigated and learned the victim had lived completely alone, with no contacts and no family. They were invisible to society, so when they vanished, no one noticed. Clearly, the killer had chosen them carefully, turning them into raw material for art. But Joachim only looked at Raphael with suspicion. Later, Raphael met his wife, asking if their daughter was all right last night. Thankfully, she was, but Bella handed him a receipt, asking if he was sick. That morning she had found it at home. It was from his hospital visit. Raphael stammered, insisting he was fine. The more he hid, the angrier Bella became. Finally, she told him, "If you want to see your daughter, you need to learn to control your emotions. And go see a psychiatrist. I told you, I'm fine. Do you want me to file a restraining order?" During the argument, Raphael's stomach cramped again. He rushed to the beach. The human meat he had eaten earlier had all been vomited out. It seemed only fresh human flesh could keep him alive. Meanwhile, the coroner dissected the human statue. The victim's body fluids and fat had been replaced with chemicals, making them appear lifelike. Seeing Raphael, the coroner grew uneasy but didn't mention the bite marks. Instead, he handed over the victim's clothes. Written on them was, "Statue number 5. This proved Raphael was telling the truth. The killer saw the victims as art. That meant at least 4 others had already died, but the police hadn't found them. As the team discussed, the killer issued a challenge. He hacked into the museum system, broadcasting a video of the victim while alive. Meanwhile, Stein couldn't sleep, suspecting his wife had discovered his secret. "Tell me the truth. Did you go into my lab?" Anna didn't answer immediately, because she had. That night, when Stein was out, she used the basement key. To her horror, she found Gino tied up. When she approached, he woke, and she fled in terror. Stein returned to find the key moved, so he checked the basement. Gino stayed silent. Was someone upstairs? Fortunately, Gino didn't expose Anna, and Stein was relieved. He checked Gino's pulse. "What are you doing? By now, you should have mutated." Then Stein realized no heartbeat was the real sign of change. He strangled Gino to death. Still troubled by the missing key, he confronted Anna. "Why did you go down there? The key was in the drawer. You can go down anytime. I would never do that." At last, Stein was reassured. Meanwhile, Raphael was in turmoil. His daughter and their dog had tracked him down by scent. Fighting the hunger, he shouted, "Get out of here. His scream terrified the girl, who ran off, but before she got far, a car pulled up, blocking her path. Tobias, ready to strike at Raphael's daughter. Half an hour later, Raphael's wife received a call from school. Their daughter had never shown up. Panicked, she rushed to the shipyard, but as soon as she stepped onto a boat, she was knocked unconscious. When she awoke, she found herself tied up. Moments later, Raphael appeared. The sight of him terrified Bella. Her husband looked like a corpse. Regaining a moment of clarity, Raphael unbuttoned his shirt, revealing his wounds, and explained everything. Bella refused to believe him. Convinced he was hiding an illness, she demanded to know where he was keeping their daughter. Struggling to contain his rage, Raphael held out his chest. "Touch my pulse," he told her. Bella froze when she realized there was none. His entire body was ice cold, like the dead. Before she could react, a noise overhead drew Raphael's attention. He went up to find Tobias waiting, smirking at Raphael's frail state. Tobias mocked him. He could have been strong but let his pathetic conscience get in the way. Then Tobias showed him a photo of his kidnapped daughter. His demand was clear. That night, a ship full of refugees would dock. Raphael had to guarantee its safe landing, or his daughter would be Tobias's dinner. Raphael sat helpless, crushed by the threat. Meanwhile, a funeral home reported to the police that a body had been discovered in a coffin. Its flesh had been bitten. They usually never open coffins before cremation. This was another of Tobias's victims. It was how he disposed of bodies. Investigators soon traced the delivery back to one of his men and put him under surveillance. Back on the boat, Raphael confessed to Bella. Before his transformation, he had supplied Tobias with intel for money. But it wasn't greed that drove him, it was guilt. Years ago, during a raid, Raphael's bullet passed through a criminal and struck an innocent girl, leaving her in a vegetative state. Her mother, Maria, struggled to pay for her care, turning to prostitution. Raphael had supported them financially ever since, but at the cost of his own family. Bella was devastated, but at last, she understood his torment. After explaining everything, Raphael freed Bella and promised to bring their daughter back safely. He went to the red light district to find Maria, hoping Tobias might appear. Maria hadn't seen him in a long time. Raphael left, unaware that his daughter was hidden in Maria's room all along. Not far away, Raphael realized one of Tobias's henchmen was tailing him. He pulled over, slipping under a bridge. As the man searched, Raphael appeared from behind. The hunger overwhelmed him, erasing his control. Only the sight of the man's gun stopped him from tearing him apart. Snapping back, Raphael washed the blood from his hands with rainwater and picked up the man's phone. Suddenly, Joachim and the captain appeared. They had been following the henchman but instead caught Raphael in the act. He hastily explained he had tried to tail the man but ended up in a fight. The henchman fled to Tobias, begging for help. Tobias shot him in the head, ensuring he could never mutate. Raphael fed on the blood, regaining strength, but he was still forced to obey Tobias's orders. That night, the refugee ship docked. Raphael and Joachim went to investigate. Soon after, the refugees disembarked. Hearing noises, Joachim went to check and blacked out. When he came to, he witnessed Tobias feasting on the terrified migrants. Joachim opened fire, but his bullets had no effect. He fled in horror, scrambling onto a container to escape. From there, he overheard Raphael confronting Tobias. "Tobias, where's my daughter? I did what you asked." But Tobias had no intention of honoring the deal. Furious, Raphael transformed violently. Just then, police swarmed the docks. Both he and Tobias were forced to flee into the night. The next morning, Raphael went to Stain. His only hope left. The scraps of flesh he had eaten the night before weren't enough to sustain him. He begged Stain for a cure, but the doctor had no answers. Gino had died under Stain's hands and never revived, leaving him with no subject to study. Suddenly, Stain bared his neck to Raphael. "Bite me. This is the only way. You want to save your daughter, don't you? You need strength, do it now." "I'm willing, Raphael. You're starving to death." Raphael moved in but at the last moment shoved Stain aside and fled. He couldn't cross that line, yet Stain's offer sparked an idea. Raphael visited his blind father. The old man smiled, saying he longed to see the sky and the sea once more. After a long silence, Raphael held his father's hand. "Father, I need a miracle. But it will come at a heavy price." He told him everything about his daughter's abduction, about his half-dead existence. The father understood immediately. Raphael led him out of the hospital. "I'm sorry, Raphael, but you can't. Step aside. This is my choice. Tell Bella and the children I love them." The father sacrificed himself, offering his body as food. Soon after, he died, only to rise again, transformed like Raphael. At last, he could see the world. The two sat together until dusk, when the father placed a gun in Raphael's hands, pressing it to his own temple. The father gave Raphael hope. Now, he had to save his daughter. Meanwhile, Tobias set his next plan into motion. He called Maria, instructing her to prepare the child. This time, Maria sensed danger. She dressed the girl and hid her under the bed. She didn't want to be complicit anymore, but fear had kept her silent until now. Moments later, footsteps echoed outside.
Frau! Papa!
Raphael arrived just in time. Soon after, Stain received a call from him. When Tobias came, he sensed something was wrong, but inside he found only Stain waiting.
Fuck's anyway.
Tobias became Stain's next test subject. When it was over, Raphael stood outside his home, tears in his eyes as his daughter returned safely. He had kept his promise to his wife. But Joachim appeared behind him. The police had found his father's body and now knew the truth. Together they went to Stain's house. Joachim demanded answers, but Raphael knocked him out. When he awoke, he was tied up in Stain's basement, with Tobias locked in a cage nearby. Raphael had no intention of hurting him. Instead, he used Joachim's phone to record a confession. He admitted everything, selling information to Tobias for money, and handed Joachim a bag of cash, enough evidence to imprison him, but all he asked for was more time to find the one truly responsible for his condition. He untied Joachim, who, recognizing Raphael's tormented conscience, gave a reluctant nod. Before leaving, Joachim told Raphael they had discovered statue number 1, an old woman who had lived alone. Stain showed no reaction, but the truth was chilling. That old woman had been the source of Raphael's mutation. She had lived in solitude with only an ostrich for company. One day, the bird went mad, stricken with a strange disease. She couldn't bring herself to kill it and locked it in a cage. While feeding it, she was bitten. Looking at the wound, she finally killed the bird. Moments later, Stain arrived and chose her as his first subject, preserving her in a chemical bath. The virus from the bite mutated with the solution, creating a new strain. Some of the liquid leaked onto a bullet, which Stain loaded into his gun. When Raphael stumbled upon Stain committing murder, it was that very bullet that pierced his chest, making him what he was now. Before leaving, Stain promised he would find a cure, but what he truly wanted was the original virus strain. The virus in Raphael's body had lost its potency. It couldn't even trigger mutation in genome. At this point, Stain discovered that there was only one strain of virus present in both Tobias and Raphael, meaning no amount of research could ever yield a cure. Stain held out his arm toward Tobias. "Do you want me to let you bite me? Seems like you never intended to find a cure at all." But Tobias wanted the power for himself. He wasn't about to give Stain a chance. During their exchange, however, Stain coaxed Tobias into revealing the infection process. "Inject the virus, then strangle yourself to death. Sometimes it takes minutes, sometimes days, but once revived, you'll be reborn like him." Stain realized then, his experiment on Gino hadn't failed. He just hadn't waited long enough before turning him into a statue. Shortly after, Stain set out with a vial of the virus, looking for a new subject, but when someone unexpectedly arrived, he abandoned the plan. Returning home, he found Tobias's cage empty. Anna lay mauled on the floor. His wife had gone down to the basement, thinking her husband was torturing another innocent, only to become Tobias's prey. Tobias appeared behind Stain, chewing on the vial of virus, preparing to strike. Stain fired at him, forcing Tobias to flee since he wasn't wearing his steel helmet. Not long after, Raphael arrived. Anna's death left Stain consumed by grief and rage. He vowed to find a cure and drew more blood from Raphael. The next night, Maria received a chilling phone call. The voice on the line was her daughter's, though she had long been vegetative. Tobias had forced the girl to speak, summoning Maria and Raphael to meet him alone. At the docks, they discovered the place filled with Tobias's food. Maria's daughter was locked in a cage, savagely tearing into a man's body. Before they could act, they realized they had been trapped. Tobias locked them all inside. Minutes later, the girl went berserk, lunging at her mother, only for Raphael to restrain her. Then, police stormed the scene. Raphael hadn't been foolish enough to come alone. Tobias panicked and tried to flee, but he had nowhere left to run. Under heavy gunfire, he felt his helmet clattering to the ground. Even as he writhed in defiance, Tobias was finally destroyed. Later, Raphael brought Maria's daughter to Stain, hoping he could cure her. "Can you heal her? It's still experimental. Are you ready? I'll go get it." But Stain had never developed a cure. He was only interested in extracting Raphael's virus. He began his notes. Research log, patient Stain Frank. While they waited anxiously, the masked man appeared. Stop! Stain collapsed. When Raphael tore off the mask, he was stunned. It was Stain all along, yet he failed to notice the sinister smile on his face. Maria approached, trembling. "There's no cure, is there?" Raphael shook his head in despair. Maria, hopeless, stepped toward her daughter. 2 gunshots rang out, ending their tragic lives. 2 days later, Raphael met Joachim at a deserted beach. With no cure, he couldn't go on like this. He asked Joachim to end his suffering. Just as Joachim raised his gun, a noise came from a nearby morgue freezer. The coroner opened it to find Stain's eyes staring back. He had mutated. The coroner froze, unsure what to do, and in that very moment, Raphael's latent power finally awakened. That was the full story of Styx 2024. What do you think of this film? On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate it? Leave your answers in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.